Welcome to the Master Your Energy podcast with Harry Massey, where we dive deep into the science and spirit of energy, health, and personal growth. In each episode, we speak with leading voices across fields like bioenergetics, integrative medicine, and conscious living, uncovering insights and tools to help you restore your energy, enhance vitality, and align your life with purpose. Whether you're a health practitioner, a seeker of well-being, or simply curious about the power of energy in your life, you're in the right place. Thanks for tuning in. To explore more about the world of bioenergetics and practical tools to transform your health, visit e4l.com.
Welcome, everyone. We're thrilled that you're here today. Today, you're going to discover what could be a transformational addition to your practice and for your clients' lives. You've already booked your discovery call, and now it's time to take a deeper look behind the scenes. We're pulling back the curtain on Bioenergetic Wellness System, also known as BWS, and everything that's been built to support you. So I just want to say before we get started that for a good part of my life, I was chronically ill. I had multiple autoimmune conditions. I was challenged with mental health problems. And like many people, Western medicine completely failed me. So I ended up going on a journey that led me to learning hundreds of healing modalities, many of which I tried. And now, as a practitioner, I have learned even more. And I have to say that Energy for Life is by far the most promising and revolutionary system of healing that I have ever known. It is really my opinion that the future of medicine is here at Energy for Life. And that's why I'm doing this interview today. That's why I chose to work with Energy for Life, because I am intensely passionate about sharing this information with people like you so you can get this healing revolution underway. People are sick, they're suffering, and they need tools beyond biochemistry. And Energy for Life has them. Joining me today is Harry Massey, founder of Energy for Life and one of the true pioneers of bioenergetic medicine. Harry, welcome.
Well, it's great to be here, Brianne. And it's our first webinar together, and I'm really excited to do it.
Yeah, me too. So, Harry, take us back. How did this all begin for you?
So when I was 20, I had these 3 accidents that led me to being bedbound and having full-on chronic fatigue syndrome. I'll just give a brief version of it because you might have already heard it on a podcast. But I was ice climbing in the first one. I fell 60 foot, ended up fracturing my spine that day, although I didn't realize that for another year and a half till I'd had a paragliding accident and they noticed the fracture. After that, I started getting really, really tired at university, but didn't honestly know what was going on. Went out to the Alps, was climbing there, had this fever, came down from this fever, checked into a hotel for 10 days, and then that turned out to be Epstein-Barr. And after that, I really started declining. Took my first job, was fired because I was too exhausted, went back out to the Alps thinking I could heal myself through climbing and French food. That didn't work out very well. I exhausted myself even more to the point I got completely stuck in a tent, just eating dried bananas and water for 10 days. Drove myself back to England, having to stop on the highway every 40 minutes, otherwise I would have crashed the car. Wow. Very stupidly enrolled in an MBA because I didn't know what to do because I couldn't work. Got to the MBA, very quickly realized I couldn't really get through it, split it over 2 years, but even that was far too much. And I actually ended up in my second year of that MBA doing it in a wheelchair, and I did all my exams in a wheelchair. And it was very stupid, honestly, because I was way, way too sick to be doing anything like that, but I was extraordinarily determined to my detriment at the time. Right. And after that, I ended up with full-on bedbound chronic fatigue back at my parents' house. didn't know what to do, but I tried everything you could think of. And I went down in those days it wasn't called functional medicine in England, but I went to all the nutritionists and alternative doctors that we had. They really didn't know what to do with me. They gave me all these magnesium IVs, recommended Gerson therapy, which I did for a year and a half. I did things like Holder Clark, where you'd zap all your parasites.
Yeah.
I did the whole fasting thing. And oh my goodness, I literally did. I would literally try everything for around a year, or sometimes 6 months to a year, till I got to the end of it and wasn't getting anywhere. And after about 5 years, I concluded that the biochemistry, nutritional, naturopathic approach just wasn't working for me. And I'm not saying they don't work. Of course, they're beneficial. But for me, there was obviously something missing, and I had to go further. And I just pondered at the time, I was like, well, all these horrible books about ME and chronic fatigue syndrome, they all say that, if you've had it for 2 years, 80% of people don't recover. And, they're all going on about all these different drugs, different supplements for, have licorice for your adrenals, or, this antiviral drug because it's caused by Epstein-Barr or whatever. But, it was always a problem. Here's a chemical supplement, something to do it. And after 5-6 years of exhausting all of those different supplements, chemistry, diet that you could think of, I just thought, well, I think I'm just looking at this whole thing the wrong way around. It's like, why don't I study energy itself and where energy comes from, and also how energy is in a healthy person, rather than this sort of very disease label idea.
Smart.
And that little bit of insight, honestly, it's just led to it led to Bioenergetics and our company. And so I researched around, came across this professor called Professor Peter Fraser, and he'd been mapping out the energy and information of the human body, which he saw as this overall master control system for metabolism, growth, and repair.
Yeah, wow.
So I wrote him a fax. He didn't have email or anything. So I wrote him he wrote back, and he sent me a paper on quantum biology. And I read it, and I was 26, and I didn't have a physics degree. I mean, I had a business degree and an MBA, so I wasn't stupid, but I also, I didn't have physics or biology. Read it, didn't understand it, but you can tell when there's something genius behind someone's ideas.
Right.
And then rang him up, and I said, Peter, I've got this sort of idea. By the way, I'm really, really sick, but my idea is that I want to help people at home, because I was at home and I couldn't drive to different doctors and practitioners, and I would have to persuade my parents to, and sometimes it was like 2 hours drive, so that was a big ordeal for my father, who generally did the drive. I just had this concept that if you could help people like myself who are at home and tell them what was wrong with them, and then give them the information. And I didn't mean information as in Infoceuticals, I just meant knowledge at the time, how you could get better, then that would be a good thing. I said that to him. He was like, oh, that's a good idea. And he said, I think I know how to get people better. And he grabbed onto that word information. Now, at the time, he was actually helping people through providing what we now call information, but he called them magnetic vectors at the time. But he would imprint magnetic vectors into colloidal minerals and use that to trigger a healing response. And obviously, I changed that word to information. And what we ended up with is this beautiful map of the human body field that provides the informational blueprint that will get people better. And there's a lot to that story, but the highlights are he ended up emigrating from Australia. He moved to England, and we ended up forming this R&D company that at the time we named Ness Health, that stood for Bioenergetic Systems. And we did 10 more years of R&D to perfect it. So there was literally, I think, another 2,500 Infoceuticals and maybe 10,000 plus experiments to get to the map of the human body field that we have today. And I was the guinea pig. There were a few other guinea pigs too, but I was the guinea pig, trying all these different infoceuticals, having most, like, not all of them pleasant, but some really interesting things happening
Right.
to my body, which I don't know, maybe it might be nice to describe, but like one, like what are now called energetic integrators, which are really the most efficient way of delivering information throughout the body. In those days, they were completely raw. So, where I'd had an MMR vaccine, like a whole boil erupted on my shoulder there where the previous scar was, and then it disappeared. And I don't have that. And I don't have that scar. Like, the scar just disappeared. As a one little example, but there's so many examples. And the first thing he ever gave me was an antidote to the viruses that I had in me. And I got this fever that only lasted 2 days, it wasn't like a flu that lasts a week. That was basically it's basically the body correct itself in real time. And because of that, I knew. I mean, I read that paper originally. I was like, "Oh, this guy's a genius." But then, when he gave me the first Infoceuticals, and I had this response, I was like, "Oh no, there's really something in this."
Exactly.
That's why we went on this. We had a beautiful 10-year R&D journey together on it.
It definitely wasn't a quick build. I mean, it was 10 years with Peter and developing.
Well, it was 25 years before I ever met him, of his own research. So
wow, exactly.
35 years. The company's been around 24 years. So add another 14. Oh my goodness, we're on 50 years. Yeah, and I'm age 50 this year. So yeah, it's 50 years in the making, actually. Yeah.
It's incredible. It really is incredible. And I completely identify with your journey. I had a similar journey, and many people here, functional medicine practitioners, or they also have had a healing journey themselves. And knowing that this is a different approach. This is not a biochemical approach, which supplements are biochemical, or looking at functional diagnostics. It's all biochemical. This is physics, and it's really a completely different way of looking at the body and interacting with the body, so that the biochemistry, starts to go back to the right blueprint, and there's that communication happening.
Well, I think it's what you just said about physics is so important, because in unfortunate universities, the physics department is very separate from the biology department to the chemistry department. But fundamentally, physics is at the top. It governs chemistry. Chemistry governs biology. Obviously, biology is governing actually healing. And then if you look into physics itself, there's really two components. There's the information and the energy, but basically it's the patterns of energy that information is informing that informs your chemistry and informs your biology. If you go direct to the top, you can affect everything underneath in a much, much more efficient manner than fiddling around with all these indirect chemicals.
It is truly the missing piece, and that's why it's so exciting. So tell me, how does bioenergetics give people their life back?
There's a couple of principles. So one, life is an energy exchange. Like we breathe in oxygen, breathe out carbon dioxide. There's magnetic and electrons coming in from the ground. There could be, there's light outside. So everything is a form of energy, and fundamentally, inside your body, it's really all comes down to electrons, and basically there's a flow of electrons. Like if you're looking at the Krebs cycle, it's an electron transfer chain,
right?
And so, which leads us to the sort of second principle, that the body is a battery, and we basically want to charge up the body with enough electrons so that it can go and do all of its work. And mainly, obviously, you go about your life, but in terms of healing, we want it to repair your body, power DNA and RNA to create all the repair proteins, etc. And then that leads us to that third principle, that is the body also has an energetic control system, or in our first book we called it the body field, you could call it the body field or the body's energetic control system. It's all the same. And what that is doing, that's basically guiding the fundamental source of energy in your body, which is electrons, to go and do everything else. And you might think, well, and again, I want to take us to physics, governs chemistry. Whenever a chemical reaction is occurring, and enzymes meet another molecule, etc. Well, behind that is energy, and behind that is the information that guides it. So if you can optimize the control system, it's actually a control system that is one step above all of the chemistry that's happening in your body. So that's why it's so fundamental. And, it's a little bit shortened. I sort of say it for efficiency's sake.
Of course. Yeah, very much so.
but when you optimize the body's energetic control system, you're making energy more efficient. And if you're making energy more efficient, you have more energy left over to heal. That's the simple way of saying it. It's sort of much more and more amazing than that, actually, because that energetic control system, it is actually controlling all of your biochemistry too. And it can, by giving the optimal blueprint of different functions, of different tissues, of different mechanisms in the body, including up to systems. Like we also give information for whole systems in the body. You can basically help all of those systems, tissues, organs work better.
Wow, that is so incredible. And that also is so important for the body to do its own healing in its own cadence, its own time. With being a practitioner, you always want to make sure that you're not putting the cart before the horse. You're not doing something that the body maybe wants to do in 10 steps. Everybody's at a different healing place. And so this system, I have found, is so remarkable for going in the sequence that the body wants.
Well, and the way you just said that, like the body will heal itself if you give it enough energy and if you give it the correct information. And that's honestly, well, I'd say those two. There's maybe one. There's one extra, which would be to reduce the level of stress that's going on in your life as well, because unfortunately, stress and negative emotions distort that information. But you could sum it up. It's like if your body's surrounded by the right environment of good information, good energy, it will just naturally heal itself. So it's not. I do sometimes get, like, people think, or I mean, anyone who's been sick, and obviously that was my journey for 8 years and probably yours, like we all look for like a singular pill or singular thing that will get us better. And truthfully, it's not the thing.
No.
You're just putting your body in the right conditions so that it can heal itself. And that's inclusive of what we're saying. What we're saying here, we're providing the body with the right information. We educate you on how to make sure your environment and your habits are sort of right to give you that good exchange of energy. And when you do those two things, health is the result. But it's not like this cures that, this cures that. It's
exactly. We're setting it up.
It's a narrative that's put out by like most people who claim all sorts of things.
Okay, well, let's tell everyone now, how do we identify, so the system that we use, the Bioenergetic Wellness System, also known as BWS, what exactly is BWS and what is it doing?
BWS, it stands for the Bioenergetic Wellness System. Really, it's an overall ecosystem that is combining, at this point, different sensors and different inputs, i.e., and the main one that most people are aware about is we look at your vocal biomarkers so that we can tell the different levels of energy in your organs, meridians, etc., etc. And it works through a principle of resonance, so we can also look at the different viral, bacterial, fungal families. We can look at different emotional states. But from this webinar onwards, it actually also includes also includes wearable data, so we can look at your traditional Chinese medicine pulse data if you and your clients have got the wearable. And quite soon, it's also going to be looking at blood lab results if you want to, but there's no need to put blood lab results in for an energetic system. But all of these different sources give us a more and more refined look at what's going on in your body. And the thing that we're most concerned with, the analysis and your symptoms, they're not as important as getting to the root cause, but even more important than that is getting to the sequence of healing. Where BWS is just magical and so different to any other system is what we present you in the recommendations. It's actually what you need now from an information point of view. And when you do it in order, like you basically go scan by scan by scan, and you go through these different sets of Infoceuticals, whether it's the liquid ones or through the gem or My Health, etc., or through our light bed, it'll take you through that sequence. It's like unpeeling layers off an onion, and then over time you just get back to really how you should be, or an improved version of yourself.
It is a wonderful system. The way it is, the platform, the way it is laid out, the ease of the voice scan, the ease of the information for the clients. It is remarkable how much support that you have built in to BWS for the clients and for the practitioners. There's so many resources. So I'm sure everyone watching will get to see and get to try it very soon if they haven't already. So after the scan,
I say it's also a magical journey, because I say it is so fundamentally different in the sense that bioenergetics is this full philosophy, and those experiments I totally glossed over that did for 25 years, then another 10 years with us. We're basically mapping out the best way to basically heal someone, what all those sequences were, and what all those, basically how from an energetic point of view, how that energetic control system works on a system by system, tissue by tissue, organ by organ, meridian by meridian basis. And honestly, just learning that knowledge alone, even if you don't get our system, I would say read Decoding the Human Body Field, because that set of knowledge you could apply, to your naturopathic practice, acupuncture practice, etc. Because but it's that cohesive philosophy that's completely, integrated and built into the technology. And then from there, I'd say the other part of the ecosystem, it drives, it'll drive digital Infoceuticals, the wearable light bed, My Health. There is a whole lot of AI coming. This is all built pre-AI. I mean, sort of the hard way, but human intelligence, experiment by experiment. But AI can't do experiments. AI can think, and it can hallucinate. It can do all of that. But what's in that system is actual, real experiments, bit by bit by bit by bit. And we threw away so many theories.
We talk about personalized medicine, individualized medicine in like functional medicine or diagnostic testing, but this goes so far beyond that concept, because everyone is unique, and everyone, when they come in and they do a voice scan, the system, the algorithm or BWS, whatever you want to call it, it will literally take that person through exactly the sequence that they need in order to heal, which is going to be different for every single person that does a scan. I don't know of a system out there that does what this does. So I think it's a revolutionary.
Obviously, I've seen them all. I don't know if I've seen them all, but probably.
You probably have.
I think the simple description of any other system is there generally databases that have collections of of viruses, bacteria, toxins, sometimes nutritional components, and they just chuck it out there, and you're still left with you still don't know how the body works or how to heal it's like, oh, well, I should take a bit of coenzyme Q10 because it came up in this scan or something. That's just not what we're doing here. This is an actual accurate map of how the body works and how to heal.
I want to move on a little bit to what would be next, which is the MyHealth. This is a therapeutic device, you could say, and this is another part of our ecosystem. So tell us a little bit about the MyHealth device and how we might integrate this into a practice.
The reason why we made it is a couple of reasons, but one, going back to those climbing accidents, they caused an awful lot of pain. And even when I met Peter, and he was basically giving me all of these Infoceuticals that we were researching at the time, my overall health and different organ health, etc., and function was becoming a lot better. However, I was still in an awful lot of back pain, and to describe more, I basically fused down here, sort of dislocated all in the upper thoracic. Tore this tendon, it doesn't actually exist anymore, and tore around here, and I was basically spent years and years in pain. And I was just thinking, from an informational point of view, an infoceutical provides good informational blueprints, but when you've got a lot of scar tissue, that's not quite enough. So I was thinking, well, how on earth can we trigger a healing response and help tissues heal better? And especially because I was in all of this pain. So what the MyHealth is, it combines a whole number of different modalities, which combined are its magic. And you can get half of them separately on the market. Some of them you can't get at all because it's unique to us with the information part, but you can't get any of this combined apart from in a MyHealth.
Wow.
But to talk you through it, I'll start with the basic stuff, the boring stuff. So we have the infrared and red light laser diodes between the two electrodes. The reason we do that is because we want to put coherent energy into the tissue. When there's more energy in the tissue, naturally it has more energy to repair. Okay, that's basic building block. Second is what we're doing with PMF. Most people have heard of PMF. It stands for pulsed electromagnetic frequency. So we also have a PMF coil behind where all those LEDs and laser diodes are.
Wow.
That obviously provides magnetic energy as well. Again, same purpose. It's actually there to put energy into the tissue, and there's obviously a lot of research in bone healing, tissue repair with PMF. Now we start getting a bit more clever. That's sort of basic stuff. The third part is we also put in an electrical signal. Now, this electrical signal, it comes from a map of different frequency sets that we found. I say we found. This is again this little period. This is about 2.5 years of experience with Peter, maybe 16 to 18 years ago now.
Okay.
And what we wanted to do is work out which tissues and functions of the body were resonant to particular frequency sets. So we worked out all of these frequency sets.
Cool.
Put those frequencies in, and then on top of that, we modulated those frequency sets with the information that we have in our Infoceuticals, so we can provide those tissues with the right informational blueprints that knows how to respond better. And then on top of that, we added a feedback mechanism. So when the signal is going into the tissue, we're also reading in real time the response, and the wavelength changes in response to impedance. Now, impedance sounds a fancy word, but it basically means resistance. So, let's say I injured myself right here. The body naturally would then produce a load of water and would get inflamed in that area. When that happens, current is more easily able to flow. The device is basically reading that signal, and then it'll alter that signal. And what matters here is the body can only take a certain amount of energy, and it can only take a certain amount of healing response. So the device is only giving the correct information, the correct wavelengths to elicit the maximum healing response. Rather, like the opposite of that would be, a standard electro device like a TENS or some other pain unit that's just putting in a like dull,
Right.
just putting in a constant signal, and it's not adapting itself. The problem with that is your nerves, like at some point, like relatively quickly, just get used to that signal, and so there's no further effect. So you actually need to adapt the signal so it doesn't do that.
That's what's so exciting, I think, about the My Health, the GEM, is that this biofeedback, where we're actually not just giving the body frequencies or information, we are receiving
this whole idea of like rife frequency, you're holding these things and just like it's so
exactly. The
it's
body,
so
that body needs that dance, right, of communication back and forth. And I think this is so revolutionary because I mean, I've used in my practice and in my own healing so many different devices. I don't think any of them had that biofeedback ability to like know where my body is.
They have a bit of an effect, but it doesn't really last, and the body gets used to it, and then you just stop using it. So which obviously isn't that useful. When you're putting that signal into the body, there's another component that's going on, which is neuromodulation. Now it is also talking to the nervous system. And when you injure yourself, a great example might be you twist your ankle running, but you don't twist it so badly it's properly injured, but it hurts like hell. It's like seizing up. What does the brain do? It goes, well, Brianne, I don't want you to run tomorrow or the next day because you're going to be an idiot and run too fast and twist your ankle. So I'm going to basically seize it up. But there isn't actually but it's not actually fully injured. So often the body sort of works against itself when you get injured. So instead, and this works really well if you injure yourself and you get there quickly, you can basically start communicating through the nervous system to the brain and actually tell the brain to speed up the healing process quicker. And in general, the Russians did a lot of research into this, but they found it'll speed healing responses by about 5 times the normal rate. And we've seen that in wounds and with bones and with different tissues. So you speed up the healing, but also more importantly, rather than it just shutting down communication to that area, you keep it open so you actually will get mobility. Because the problem with those, they turn into these chronic injuries. You're not in that area, so all the blood flow gets reduced, and it just sort of drags on for months. Whereas actually, you do want to get blood flow, you do want to get movement. We've also put in a pulse reader, so we can look at your 5-element pulse, so you can see improvements. And the other side, and I say this is a work in motion. We've been inventing this the last 2.5 or so years, like pre this rise in AI. But because it's built on an Android system and AI is coming in at the rate of knots, where it's going is you'll be able to just ask the device, I've got a migraine. It'll look at your full scan. It'll go, well, that's probably because of a kidney deficiency, etc. And then it'll tell you exactly where you can place the My Health, and what function to do, because it's part of that ecosystem. Because absolutely, it's an ecosystem.
I'm so lucky I have one and use it every day. So it is an ecosystem because we have the platform where that is where we get all of the information about the scans. We are able to do the voice scan. We have the scan results. That's the portal we get to go in. We have the My Health, where we can do, physical application. And then another remedy, which we haven't really dove into yet, but we have to. We've talked about Infoceuticals a little bit, but just touch on for us how the Infoceuticals work and why this is such an important piece, because it's literally the remedy and the information. That information, that's how we get it into the body to start restoring that blueprint. So tell us a little more.
I have to say, so when I met Peter the first time, and he told me that you could have information in water and that, water could have a memory, I actually didn't believe him. Well, I was pretty skeptical anyway. And I think it was an initial 10 days I spent with him just talking. Obviously, what proved it to me was when he made me one, and I got this response. I was like, oh, okay, there has to be something in it. But I'll just take people a bit through some of the background of these ideas, and then also where the modern research is. Originally we could go back to Hahnemann 200 plus years ago, who's the father of homeopathy, and he would take a different herb or substance that, if you took a lot of it, would cause the symptom, and he would succuss it in milk and in lactose, and then it would end up as a milk solid little pill. Mm-hmm. And homeopathy actually worked relatively well 200 years ago, but these days there's so many environmental toxins, there's so much EMF that the body honestly we're just honestly in a completely different environment. So there's very subtle messages have got lost. And the other problem with homeopathy is it's very, very indirect, because you're wanting to take a message from something that may be similar to the symptom, and you're diluting a lot, and it's not very precise. And now plus forward 150, 60 odd years, then there was a scientist called Benavista, he was French, and he started he actually found it by accident. So he was an allergen researcher, and he found by accident if there was an allergen in a sample and it went next to a mast cell, if he removed the allergen, but it had been there, so there was just sort of like an informational blueprint left over, the mast cell still reacted as though the allergen was there. He's like, oh, that's interesting. And he started making a digital copy, basically an electromagnetic copy. So he put a little coil around the allergen, put a little field, and then did that in the blood plasma over here. And then the mast cell would react as though there was a real one. So he published that, or tried to publish in Nature. That's a whole other sub-story. Nature refused. They eventually agreed because he had it repeated in 3 other labs, and then he was discredited. And then I think he was murdered. He was supposedly committed. He certainly died of a heart attack, but I think that it was murder, because Big Pharma did not want that idea that you could have, digital copies of something without a drug,
without the actual substance,
without the actual drug. So then another Nobel Prize scientist took that up, which was Luc Montagnier. He won the Nobel Prize for discovering HIV virus. And he ended up basically making copies of viruses electromagnetically by putting all the base pair material electromagnetically, taking it, transferring the information, and then the base pair material would assemble into that identical virus. I read that. I mean, Peter was already making Infoceuticals, but I think I actually met Montagnier 15 odd years ago. And, the difference with what we're doing is, like, me and Peter, obviously, we don't care about creating allergens or creating viruses. What we want to do is basically provide this healthy blueprint. But the important part is we do want DNA and RNA to go and create repair proteins, and obviously start healing the body. But anyway, there is this history of it. Yeah. And really the leapfrog that me and Peter made was, instead of trying to do it with something negative like a toxin or a virus or an allergen, we just wanted to provide healthy information to the body and get it to optimize the body's control system above the chemical control system and really above the genetic system, and interact with the genetic system so that it can go and repair the body. Now, okay, so Peter did all these experiments. I knew, obviously, I took all the first Infoceuticals, worked on me, then a whole bunch of patients and practitioners in Europe. And then this is before we brought it to the States like 12 or so years ago. And then more recently, in the last 4 years, we have a research program at University of California, San Diego, where we've been looking at those effects that we already know about, because of what the original experiment said and what we've seen clinically, but we wanted to repeat it in different cell cultures in the lab. So Professor Hemel, he's done all sorts of experiments for us, but we've been able to increase mitochondrial density, been able to protect cells from oxidative stress, we've been able to reduce viral penetration rates, we've been able to repair, speed up wound healing, etc. And I'll see if there's anyone listening who wants to help with or donate to research. I mean, there's 76 Infoceuticals, all these parts of the body. There is so much research that needs to be done to prove all these things out in the labs. We can always need help because it's a little bit beyond our relatively small company.
It is. Anyway, it's really remarkable how you guys have brought this to the market and also done so much research and research in the lab. We have Dr. Himal Patel, who at UCSD been doing research. And if anyone hasn't seen, I hope by now maybe they've seen our main, I don't know what you want to call it, commercial, but it does showcase this research, and you talk about it beautifully. So it's there, and this is now becoming more mainstream, thank God, because we really need it. We need to be talking about physics and not so much about the biochemistry.
The beautiful thing with the whole BWS ecosystem and the wearable, I mean, you can see your patient's data getting better in real time from what you're doing. So, I mean, that the whole company and that ecosystem now becomes its own research in itself, which wasn't really possible before everything was interconnected in the sort of new AI era with entry. I might say one thing on AI. I know people freak out about AI, but how we look at it as a company, I'm sort of looking at it as it's sort of like an augmented energetic intelligence, because the system uses principles of resonance,
Right.
and really what we're doing here is we're augmenting the intelligence of our practitioners and clients so that you can be more focused on it's really augmenting your own intuitive energetic intelligence, but not it's not doing its own thing, because there's a very strong place for how humans and resonance and intuition are needed within healing.
Absolutely. Well, there are already over 5,000 practitioners been using the BWS system, giving infoceutical remedies. We have practitioners using the My Health as well in their practice, and also using the My Health really successfully with animals. So I think that is another really cool aspect of this, is that, this is really for the entire family. It's for the children, it's for your animals. There's so many times where I've been stumped with my niece, when she was a child, when she was a baby and she couldn't talk, right? We can get information just by her voice or putting her hand on the hand scanner without, and it calmed us down. It really calmed us down. Same with having a cat and you don't know, and the cat's starting to lose its hair or whatever's going on. And you were able to do a scan and see real time, what are some of the challenges? And so that really is helpful as far as our stress levels. As normal people, it's like, oh, it's so nice to be less stressed, to have this tool. So it has so many implications that are far reaching. So one thing I wanted to mention, Harry, because this system is already revolutionary, but there's an aspect of it that I find so unique, specifically because I have a background in functional nutrition, functional diagnostics, and the challenge that I faced with clients was not being able to address their mind body issues, or not being able to, because I'm not certified in that, right? I'm a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, or I'm really good at supplement protocols and herbalism, and it's more of the physical body, not so much the mental emotional body, that I don't have my certification in that. However, with this voice scan and BWS and getting your scan results back, we as the practitioner are able to gently highlight awareness around maybe possible negative belief systems, possible imbalanced emotions, even stored traumas. And as a practitioner, I know, and I know all of you out there know, that these traumas and belief systems are a huge piece of the puzzle when addressing someone's healing journey. And many will not recover fully unless these things are addressed. And what BWS and Infoceuticals allows us to do as a practitioner is create awareness around their beliefs and around their traumas without us having to do the deeper work that I'm not certified to do. So the BWS is in identifying imbalances, and the Infoceuticals does the healing work of liberating trauma imprints from the body, or helping us to just shift a way that we've been possibly seeing the world for so long due to trauma and belief systems. And the Infoceuticals can help us get a new perspective on things. So this is like the holistic care that I've always wanted to do. And now I have the tools to do that because of BWS.
It's not necessarily part of BWS, but there's this whole philosophy called GIST that stands for attitude, intention, surrender, trust. And for those clients that want to go on that journey, it's a 300-page philosophy video course, all the rest of it. But basically, that philosophy is there to help you make better choices, so that, well, in short, if you master your energy, you can master your life. And that's what the whole point of the whole company of Energy for Life is. But there is a deeper philosophy and wisdom on how you can practically actually go about your life. It's not really part of this webinar, but to say that there is a deeper level for people who want to go there. And the only other thing I wanted to say about the emotions, so it actually is quite significant. So take that principle of the body is a bit like a battery, and if you have low energy, you're more susceptible to disease symptoms, etc. Now, the biggest leak of energy is negative emotions, literally. There's this Yale study done over 10 years that looks at smokers and whether they had anger or they were just sort of joyful, or didn't have anger. It's 100% proven the ones who end up with cancer were the angry ones, and the ones who didn't have any anger score didn't end up with cancer. Now, it's not that smoking doesn't have an effect, it's the combination. But basically, when you're inhaling all those toxins into your lungs, when you're in a more joyful state, it's your energetic control system, your body field is able to repair. So it's able to excrete those toxins more easily. But when you're all angry, that information system is totally distorted. When it's distorted, the body doesn't repair and you get sick. So the emotional component is, I say it's the most important part. And I've been through hell and back, literally, and tried and done most of these things. But the part I focus on the most is how you can basically manage how I can manage my emotions and make better choices. That's better
Yeah,
decisions. It's so key,
it
and it's
really
so,
is.
and it is hard when you're sick, but there is a path. There is a path, and it is all written, and that's partly, not partly, it is actually the reason behind the wearable. Because the reason we made the wearables, because I wanted to make it more easy for people to manage their energy and to manage their emotions. So it gives you awareness into what your different emotional states are in any particular time period. Through awareness, you can actually make better choices, but it also corrects your information in real time. Coming I say relatively soon, like we're coming out with the wearable that's auto correcting energy and the energy and your emotions first. At some point, a few months later, we'll also introduce the ability that you can download digital Infoceuticals for your clients
Wonderful.
that have the wearable. I mean, that's a feature that's coming a little bit later. When you bring out a new product, there's so many things to refine. Like we have to go step by step,
Right. It's
make sure
huge.
make sure the basics are all good first.
Yeah, and that's why I use the word revolutionary about energy for life, because all of these concepts are revolutionary. They really will, that those missing pieces is giving that information back to the body, or giving that awareness so that someone can change their beliefs, their thought patterns. It's crucial, it's critical for healing, and that is something just so important for practitioners to be able to have access to. So Harry, tell us, what is the future of bioenergetics?
The future of bioenergetics is the same reason that I started the company, and really we're just on this continual journey of working out how the body works, the best way that we can get people better, and fundamentally just continuing that mapping out of the body's energetic control system, how we can apply that in the best way to get people better. So I could give some examples. This year is a very, very cutting edge year. I mean, honestly, I think it almost marks the end of one iteration of our company, and the birth of a whole new sort of super cycle that we're entering. And we're just coming out with the gem, coming out with a light bed in another few months down the line. Obviously, we've got this whole ecosystem of BWS, and then there's also the wearable. Now, when you take all of that and you add in AI, that honestly equals a whole new revolution. Now, I'll give some examples. So we've been able to enter all of Peter's original experiments into an AI database, and that's just fascinating because we have all of these theories, well, not just theories, but these experiments that came out of a resonance principle of how the body works. Now we can use that to design all of these different experiments that are happening in the labs and the research. And that, of course, is going to lead on to more insights, better sets of information, better ways to heal people. But also, it increases the whole field of knowledge. It increases the credibility, and ultimately it starts inspiring other universities and other scientists to take on this mantle of work. And if you look at bioenergetics as a whole, here's what it's actually doing. In the end, all chemistry, and including supplements, and I do take supplements, I'm not anti-supplements. However, all chemicals that you take in your body, they do have these second and third order effects. So, for example, turmeric, if you take a lot of turmeric every day as a male, it'll reduce your testosterone count by 30-odd%.
Oh my
So
gosh.
you don't really want to do that. It's good, like, if you injured your knee and you need to get it, you want to dampen down your inflammation for a few days instead of taking lots of, ibuprofen, that's a good use for it. But you don't want to be taking on a regular basis. So the promise and what bioenergetics is actually delivering it delivers a way that is side effect free, it's toxin free, and it's honestly, it's considerably more cost effective. And, people, somebody once said to me, it's like, why don't you charge the same as a drug? Because it's actually more effective than a drug. Well, there's a simple reason. Like we didn't start this, or I say we, when I say we, I mean me and Peter. Me and Peter didn't start this because we want to be a pharmaceutical company. We want a system that is way, way more affordable so that everyone can have it. And that's the beautiful thing about, well, in the end, it's just information combined with energy. So it allows for a whole healthcare system that can be, cost considerably less. It means people don't have to get to that super sick state, where they actually might need full-on medicine and hospitals. So our long-term goal with this is that bioenergetics takes its at least its equal place in healthcare, along with biochemistry, so that it can reduce overall healthcare costs. It can help, ultimately billions of people heal, and and obviously we just continue the research. But weirdly or not weirdly, it also has impact and effects into consciousness, because you can't really get exposed to bioenergetics without also getting exposed to to more sort of conscious thought. So that also has a knock-on effect across society.
Amazing, Harry. That's exactly what we want to have in our hearts, is more consciousness and connecting with each other, and this greater awareness of ourselves and how we interact. And I want to invite all of the practitioners here to this journey, this revolution in healthcare. So in order for me to do that, we don't need Harry. We'll just say goodbye and thank you so much for your time and sharing all of the research and love and information that you have amassed over the years with Energy for Life. We're super grateful.
No, thank you, Brianna. It's a pleasure to be here, and I look forward to meeting any practitioner who joins at any of our events or in some Zoom meeting somewhere. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
To explore everything we've talked about today, from bioenergetics to the GIST process, and to find free courses, transcripts, and ways to work with or become a practitioner, just visit e4l.com. You'll find one page that guides you to whatever best fits your next step.